The Philippines is said to be one of the fastest growing economies in Asia, with about 270 stocks listed on the Philippine stock market and only 30 stocks in the Philippine Stock Exchange Index, or PSEI. The Philippine stock market continues to remain at an attractive level for local and foreign investors. Global Strategy Real Estate keeps you updated with the latest information on the Philippine stock market to prove you just that. In collaboration with AB Capital Securities Inc., Global Strategy Real Estate presents to you the weekly stock market wrap-up, posting every Friday of every week.
はい、皆さんこんにちは。ストマス始まって以来初の、AB 対談セミナーということで、やっていきたいと思います。ですね、このライブではですね、主に、ストマスの会員様からの、あらゆる質問ですね、マーケットがどうとか、銘柄どうなのというような、本当にいろんな質問を受けて、ここで実際に現地のですね、プロアナリストの方を呼んで、私たちと一緒に皆様の質問に答えていきたいと思いますので、早速、ストマス始まって、質問募集したところ3つほどですね、今日集まってますので、その質問に答えていきたいと思いますので、皆さんぜひこれからいろいろ質問いただければなと思いますのでお願いします。で、今日一応集まっている質問3つ最初に伝えますと、今年の相場総括と来年の予想をしてくださいという質問と、支持線と抵抗線とは何ですか。これ実はですね、昨日のストマスの配信でですね、この、抵抗線の話、支持線の話出したんですけど、早速それについて質問いただいてます。で、最後に3つ目が、D と、これが、一応通信企業です。フィリピンの通信企業なんですけど、その D との実績パフォーマンス、株価、それからビジネスモデルについてお聞きしたいですと。これもですね、ストマスの配信で、今結構 D とが勢いよく伸びてるって話をしたら、こういう質問いただきましたので、早速これについて、解説していきたいと思います。では、家村さん、早速現地の方に聞いていただけますか。
はい。皆さん、こんにちは。フィリピンアセットコンサルティングの家村です。私ですね、今このフィリピンのですね、株の、セミナーやったりですね、ちょっと YouTube の動画配信したり、今度ね、この、ストックマスターズもね、始まりましたので、メンバーの方にですね、皆さんの投資に有益な情報をですね、いろいろな形でお伝えできればなと思っております。それでですね、今日はですね、AB キャピタル証券のですね、チーフアナリストの、レクスターさんお招きしてますので、大体ね、レクスターさん何を聞いても答えてくれるので楽しみにしています。Okay, I just briefly introduce Lexta san. He's chief analyst of AB Cap, and he can answer any questions. So please give him questions. Okay. All right. Today actually we have 3 questions from our members today. So I want to start to ask the question. Okay. The first question. Okay. 2020 this year. What's happened in the Philippine stock market? I want to hear your Lexus on laptop. What's happened in the market 2020 and next year 2021 first forecast and perspective for the next year for the Philippine stock exchange market.
Okay.
The first question.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. Thanks again for joining us. And actually, this my presentation will cover both of the overview for 2020 as well as the outlook for 2021. But I guess just a summary, market is so far we're down on a year-to-date basis about 5%, but that has managed to recover already from the low that we've seen in March. And 2021, we're very optimistic for 2021. We expect a recovery year for the Philippines, especially with the we're entering the year with lots of hopes for 2021, especially that the government has basically put in place stimulus measures in order to address the slowdown. I guess we'll discuss that further in the presentation in the next few minutes.
Thank you, thank you. So, okay. じゃあ、松下さん、ちょっと簡単にコメントというか、はい、何を。
レクサさん曰く、今年の総括としては、皆さんご存知の通り、コロナのせいでですね、3月から相場が約 5% ダウンしてしまっているということで、厳しい年だったのかなということでした。ただ、2021年の見通しとしては非常に楽観的に見ているということで、このコロナの状況次第ですが、このコロナの状況が和らげば、非常にフィリピン国内のですね、経済基盤しっかりしてますね、伸びていくだろうという予測をしてますし、政府がさまざまなですね、スティムラス、いわゆる景気刺激をしていく予測をしてますので、それで国自体が非常に伸びていくだろうという期待を込めています。おっしゃってます。
ちょっと1個だけ補足ですね、補足。ですね、5% っていうのはですね、下がってるの。今がね、パンデミック、コロナで、もの半分ぐらいまで落ちたんですよね。で、それでそこから回復していって、今ですね、今現在 5% ぐらいマイナスということで、実際にはですね、ものすごく落ち込んで、今、リカバリーの最中ということです。はい。OK. Let's see. Next question. Okay, this is more technical questions. Actually, our audience, our members don't know what is support line and what is resistance line. So how to figure out support line and resistance line.
Okay, well, essentially, the support line and the resistance levels are what we use. These are basically technical analysis. So ideally, a resistance happens usually when the market reaches a high. So the market usually retests this level. For support level, obviously that basically those support level is the previous highs that the market has hit. So usually it's whole numbers, essentially whole numbers. So in the case of the PSEI, the major resistance that we're seeing right now is at 7,400 and 8,000. So those are the previous highs of the PSEI that it has hit the past few months. Right now, the index is hovering at around 7,200. We see the major support right now at 7,000 and 6,800. So those are actually the key levels that we're looking at right now.
Okay. 解説の支持線と抵抗線って何なのですかという質問ですけども、これいわゆるテクニカル分析に使われる言語になってくるんですけども、いわゆるその相場が上がっているとき、下がっているときに対して、キーになる線になるんですけども、フィリピン、総合株価指数でいきますと、現在の抵抗線っていうのが、7200ペソから7400ペソに、いわゆるそこのラインでですね、株価が上がっていって、そこでいわゆる拮抗して、そこからその抵抗線を抜けて上がるのか、もしくは抵抗線で跳ね返ってまた相場が下がるのかっていうラインが一応抵抗線になっています。で、支持線は逆で、相場が下がっているときに、今現在でいくと、7000ペソから6800ペソが、支持線のレンジと言われているものなんですけども、相場が下がってきたときに、逆にそこを、支持線としてまた跳ね返って相場が安定して上がるのか、もしくはそこの線を突き抜けて、一気に相場が下がるのかっていうキーになる線のことですね。
はい、はい、ありがとうございます。それではですね、3つ目の質問で、3つ目の質問はちょっと そっかそっか。3つ目の質問はですね、結構ですね、ちょっとかなりね、深い質問なんですけども、ちょっとね、ディートについて聞いていきます。Okay, Lexus-san, the third question is a pretty deep but a very interesting questions about DITO. DITO Telecom is one of the hot writing companies at the moment. The company is the third telecom company, new player. And the question is, okay, DITO Telecom's income statement. Actually, there is no revenue in an income statement, but there is a total sales in the income statement. So the question is what is the company of DITO? Because DITO is started from, I think, a mining company, and then they are transferred to their IT and telecom company, which is Philweb Corporation. And now they are the group company of Udena Group. So our audience, and including me, have a little bit confusing what the DITO Telecom business is.
Okay, just to avoid the confusion, the figures that you see right now in the financial financial report of DITO is not yet the communications company. As you recall, a few months, I think a few months back, the Udena Group has actually acquired the DITO community from ISM Communications. So right now, the listed company is still undergoing restructuring. So it might not be relevant yet to look at the financial statements right now of the recent application. So right now, they're still restructuring the company. So the sales or the revenue that you're seeing right now in the financial statements is still from the company that they acquired recently, which is still ISM Communications.
Okay.
Yes. So just to avoid confusion. So
okay.
just an overview of DITO, I guess for our audience here. So they're actually they were given the franchise to be the third telco player here in the Philippines. They target to get as much as 30 to 70% coverage of the population, offering at least 30 megabytes, 30 Mbps. So with an attractive package also for consumers. So essentially, this would be an added competitor. We think that this would potentially be a threat to Globe and PLDT. But right now, I would say just an overview also of the telco sector. The mobile segment is actually a saturated market already. Most of the Filipinos already has cell phones. So I believe the ratio right now is already more than 1:1 to the population of the Philippines. So the growth right now for DITO will be coming from churning subscriber base, both from Globe and PLDT. And of course, it's also planning to boost its I guess mobile as well as the home broadband segment. I think the room for growth for DITO will be coming from the broadband side. Most of the Filipino subscribers are still on the prepaid segment. Of course, you get a higher margin for the postpaid subscribers. So essentially, these are some of the space that DITO plans to or targets to achieve in the next few years. And of course, with the backing also of China Telecom. So in terms of financial stability, they have the capability to expand at a faster pace compared to both PLDT and Globe.
Okay, thank you, Lexus-san. Can I make sure something? Okay, the current sales and revenue from the ISM. ISM is acquired by DITO. So the current sales is coming from ISM, right?
Yes. Right now, what you're if you check the FS of DITO, that's still technically that's still ISM communications.
Okay.
And,
What is the line of businesses of ISM?
Well, ISM used to be actually it was actually into several businesses. I believe it used to be in the telco segment as well. But telco it used to be a telco company, but I believe right now it's not operating already. Since as I mentioned earlier, the Ongpin group has actually sold this already. So essentially, there's actually nothing inside the listed company yet. It's just now that they're injecting the assets of the third telco. So I think it's not relevant yet to look at the FS as of this point.
Okay. Thank you. ちょっと僕が言いましょうかね、長かったからね。ちょっとね、かいつまんで言いますね。このDITOっていう会社はもう3番目の、ね、通信業者で、まだね、事業始まってないんですね。もう許認可は出てるんですけども、これからね、来年かな、来年の春、はい、ぐらいからね、3番目、PLDT グローブっていう、ね、今2つの通信会社あるんですけども、その3番目としてね、参入していきます。ただ、もともとね、いろんな会社を買収したりしているので、今、その買収した会社をリストラクチャリングしているところなので、ちょっとその、売上とかまだ実際サービス始まってないんだけど、売上とかねちょっとあるんですけども、それはもともとのね会社、買収した会社とかの売上で、ただそこはもうあまりメジャーじゃなくて、あくまでこの会社自体はですね、これからですね、始めるその第3の通信事業者としてのビジネス、これがねメインのビジネスになってくるというところでありまして、フィリピンはですね携帯ですね、モバイル、これは結構普及してるんですね、すでにね。結構普及してるんですけども、家庭用とかね、企業のブロードバンドですね、がね、まだまだ、まだ普及が遅いので、まだあまり普及してないので、このあたりがね、実際このDITOテレコムですね、これが実際サービスインした後ですね、このメジャーなビジネスになってくるというところで、当たり前ですけども、この通信事業というのはもうその国のね、基幹産業中の基幹産業のど真ん中なので、かなり期待できるんじゃないかと。こういうお話になりました。Thank you, Rex-san, for your answer. Okay.
今日の質問は一応この3つになりましたので、またですね、こういう形で毎週水曜日ですかね、この時間にですね、質問受け付けて、質問はいつも LINE を通してメッセージいただいてよろしいですので、いつでも質問ください。で、こういう形で毎週質問もらった分はその週の分はこういう形で返していきますので、またぜひ皆さん生ライブお楽しみにしていてください。以上で質問コーナー、これで終わりにします。
ちょっと1個だけじゃ付け加えね。そうですね、こういう今日ね、レクスターさんね、来ていただいてまして、非常にね、優秀な方なんですね。私もよく知ってるんですけども、すごくこのフィリピンの市場、それから個別の銘柄についてもすごい深い知識を持ってらっしゃるんで、このストックマスターズ、ね、のメンバーになるとですね、このプロのですね、アナリストのレクスターさんに直接質問ができる。これ、普通なかなかね、ない機会なんで、ぜひ皆さんですね、利用してください。それで、自分がね、投資するときに、ね、こういうことをチェックしたいとか知りたいと多分、勉強っていうかね、やり始めるとね、いろいろ出てくると思いますので、そういった質問をですね、どんどん、いただければ、直接ですね、プロのアナリストが答えてくれますので、皆さんのですね、本当にプライベートな自分のアドバイザーみたいな形でね、なので、これはね、なかなか普通できないんで、ぜひね、ご利用いただけるといいと思います。はい。
では、これで次、ウィークリーラップアップに移りたいと思います。ここからですね、一応英語のやり取りになってしまいますので、もちろん英語が分かる方はこのまま聞いていただければよろしいんですけれども、もしちょっと厳しそうという方はですね、ご心配なく、この後ですね、ビデオ配信の方もしていきますので、その際にですね、こちらの方で、今回話した内容、日本語にまとめて、サブスクリプトとしてレポートの方もつけてお渡ししますので、 ぜひそちらの方も楽しみにしていただいて、これからもストマスの方よろしくお願いいたします。では、BQ ギャップアップの方に移っていきたいと思います。
Welcome back to the weekly stock market wrap-up with AB Capital Securities Inc. Today we have Mr. Lexter to give us this week's stock market report. Mr. Lexter, you may begin.
Okay, so just to give you an overview also, so this weekly wrap-up will actually be different. We'll be covering already our outlook for next year, 2021. And we're very optimistic. We see this coming year as a recovery year for the Philippines, especially with the government being on an aggressive stance on the part of the BSP, Central Bank of the Philippines, as well as the national government. Oops, sorry. Yes. Yes, so as mentioned earlier, we're very optimistic. We're betting for a stronger performance for the PSEI. Our earnings are expected to grow by 39% this year. But obviously, these are base effects as well as some significant growth coming from a weak 2020. So we expect the index, actually we expect the economy to recover all its losses for this year by the end of by 2022, basically to recoup all the losses that we've seen. And as mentioned, so far the stimulus package has already been in place. BSP has so far implemented about 1.3 trillion pesos, or about 7% of GDP, with a combination of a series of interest rate cuts in the Philippines, as well as government bond purchases implemented by the BSP. On the national government side, we have borrowed as much as $7.1 billion from the agencies such as ADB, World Bank, and even IMF. Earlier this year, we've also seen the Bayanihan Act. Essentially, this is also a stimulus measure that supports the small businesses as well as Filipinos. About 18 million Filipinos received about 5 to 8,000 pesos in subsidies for 2 months. Recently, it also approved the Bayanihan Bill, which is also another stimulus package, which is roughly around 140 billion pesos in regular appropriation of in as much as 25 billion in standby funds. So essentially, this is a stimulus measure also to support government financial institutions, the agriculture sector, health workers, and even the transport sector, which was the most heavily hit due to this COVID crisis. And recently, the Senate has also passed the CREATE bill, essentially lowering the corporate income tax immediately to 25% from 30%. As you know, the Philippines is actually one of the highest countries that has a high corporate tax rate, which is at 30%. Compared to other Asian countries, which is as low as 18 to about 23%. So the government has actually been addressing this to support, of course, businesses as well as new investments coming into the country. Among the measures as part of the Bayanihan 3, this will include subsidies, as much as 100 billion pesos in subsidies for workers, as well as 100 billion in contact tracing, as well as the address in order to address the COVID crisis. And I believe about 100 or as much as 400 billion pesos will be allocated in relation specifically to response the COVID. So essentially, this also includes subsidies for the impact of the recent typhoon that hit the current country. As well as Filipinos that were affected, as well as business establishments that were hit on this COVID crisis. I think on the papers today, as some people, as you read on the papers today, there might be a significant amount of borrowing. However, in terms of a debt to GDP ratio, we're actually one of the more undervalued countries. Debt to GDP ratio of the Philippines is only at 41%, In fact, this is actually one of the lowest in the region. So this basically gives more room for the Philippines to borrow more money in order to address the impact of COVID. And in terms of foreign reserves, it actually breached over $100 billion already these past few months. I believe it's already at $103 billion. That's equivalent to about 9 months worth of imports and equivalent to about 7.5 times of its short-term external debt. So we have more room to borrow in order to address the slowdown, in order to address this COVID crisis. For the GDP, as you know, third quarter was actually a disappointing figure with an 11.5% contraction in the third quarter. But the third quarter figure has actually shown that we have already hit the bottom of the economy, given that the third quarter has actually slowed from the second quarter contraction. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate already hit at 10%, a significant improvement already of the 17% figure we've seen in the previous quarter. And then just to understand also the Philippine economy, this is quite essential since 70% of the total economy is private consumption. So of course, as we see unemployment rate at a high level, then definitely that would impact also consumer spending locally. However, for 2021, as mentioned, we're expecting a recovery year. In fact, a strong recovery for 2021, with the government expecting at least 6.5% GDP growth for 2021 to as high as 7.5%. Meanwhile, 2022 will even be a faster economic recovery with an 8 to 10% GDP growth. So by this year, we'll already recoup all the losses that we've booked for this year. Meanwhile, inflation will be at manageable levels, still expecting a 2 to 4% inflation rate, which is quite comfortable given the current situation. Meanwhile, the peso exchange rate against the US dollar will remain at manageable levels between 48 to 53 pesos against the US dollar. So right now, the peso is strengthening mainly because of the weaker US dollar and of course, given also the weak importation brought about by the impact also of COVID. However, with the economic recovery moving forward, then definitely that might take a hit also on the Philippine peso as we continue to import more goods outside for the build projects. Trade data, specifically on the exports, will be more an improvement also as the global economic recovery starts to improve as well. So far for the Philippines, in terms of the COVID situation, well, so far it's actually very encouraging. We have managed to sort of flatten the curve. The average daily cases here in the Philippines is roughly averaging between 1,000 to 2,000 new cases a day. So that's actually an improvement already that we've seen from about 4,000 to 6,000 cases we've seen for the month of June and July. And in terms of positivity rate, so currently the government has ramped up already testing for COVID. And the positivity rate has actually has fallen below the 5%, which is the recommended level of World Health Organization. I believe the recent figure of Department of Health already showed a 4.5% positivity rate. So for, let's say, for example, for every 30,000 testing being done by the DOH, only about 1,000 to 1,500 has being reported as positive cases, so which is actually quite encouraging as well. And of course, that would also be, of course, with the vaccine story. The government has actually ordered already, has secured already about 2 to 3 million COVID vaccination from Pfizer as well to support also the Filipinos. In terms of foreign or in terms of economic indicators, definitely 2020 has been a challenging year also for the Philippines as well as I guess for the global economy in general, but definitely 2021 will be a better figure on the investment side, as well as the whether it may be the FDI as well as hot money. Manufacturing, on the other hand, has seen a significant improvement compared to the second quarter. The recent manufacturing figure has actually been encouraging. We're actually on the verge of an expansion for the following quarters. Meanwhile, remittances has also been very encouraging, especially with the fourth quarter, usually the strongest period as well, given the holiday season. So more people send money, more Filipinos from abroad send money locally. So that would be essential, also be beneficial also for the local currency. And as mentioned, foreign reserves has actually hit a record high, $103 billion, which is enough to support any external shocks that we're experiencing. Meanwhile, trade figures will also recover for 2021 as the economy starts to improve. In terms of the monetary policy, inflation has remained manageable. In fact, BSP has been very aggressive this year, pushing record or interest rates to record low in order to support also the economy. Currently, right now, interest rates for the Philippines, the benchmark rates are 2%. Meanwhile, there's actually more ammunition, given that the reserve requirement is still at 12%. So that gives more ammo for the BSP to ease, I guess in terms of to ease liquidity also in the local market. And of course, benign inflation is also expected. As mentioned earlier, inflation will remain at manageable levels between 2 to 4%. In terms of earnings growth, of course, 2020 definitely not a good year. So we expect a contraction of 41% in terms of corporate earnings, led by the industrials as well as the property sector. However, for 2021, we expect a stronger recovery with an average earnings growth of 39% for the following year. Also with the base effects that we're going to see in 2021. In terms of regional performance of the market, the Philippines has so far it's down 8.7% since the start of the year, and about 3.7% on a US dollar basis. But this has actually started to improve already since the low that we've seen in the first quarter, and we expect it's still possible that the market may recover and close about even since the start of the year. But definitely, this is actually a good time to accumulate, especially at this levels, especially that we're coming from a lower base. And if you notice, countries that have managed to perform fairly well in order to address the COVID, Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Chinese markets have actually been up significantly this year, mainly because of better measures. They have managed to perform fairly well in order to manage the COVID crisis. But of course, the Philippines will see a similar story once we see the numbers start to improve, and especially with the vaccine already secured by the government, then definitely the market expects to recover in the coming weeks. In fact, the market has already recovered as much as 60% from the low we've seen on March. Excuse me. In terms of currency, the peso has also been very strong this year. In fact, the peso has appreciated 5% against the US dollar this year, making us one of the best performing currencies this year. In terms of seasonality, the PSEI, usually the PSEI has seen strong performances during the latter part of the year, usually December to as far as April and May. Most of the fund managers are actually starting to position as early as December for 2021. So ideally, you'd want to position yourself, especially for the month of December, as fund managers are actually realigning their portfolio in anticipation also for the following year. As you can see here also, January, February, and even April, January to April are usually the strongest months for the PSEI, as shown in the previous historical data. In terms of valuations, there's no denying that the Philippine market may be expensive, but of course, as mentioned earlier, we're coming also from a weak 2020. So definitely 2021 will be a better year for the Philippine markets. And trading at 18.7 times price to earnings ratio based on our 2021 estimates. This is actually still quite justified given that other markets such as Japan is trading more expensive, and even other countries as well, even India. And in terms of historical averages, this is actually still in line with our estimates. In terms of foreign outflow in the market, also there's no denying that we're still seeing continued foreign outflow in the market. So far, year-to-date, net foreign outflow in the market is over $2 billion, or about 120 billion pesos. But this is actually an encouraging sign also that net foreign outflow have actually started to slow, and the local fund managers have actually been supporting in the market. And what's very encouraging is that despite the net foreign outflow we've seen in a couple of months, the market has actually managed to perform very well since the low in March. And as mentioned earlier during the Q&A, we're expecting the PSEI to hit at 7,600 for 2021. However, if we see a better than expected earnings estimate, a better GDP figure versus the base target, we're not going to be surprised if the PSEI hits as much as 8,400 by next year. So that gives you a lot of upside compared to where we are right now at 7,200. And just to give you an overview also of the sectors, of course, lots of vulnerability on the banking as well as the property sector. Default rates are expected to increase, of course, for the banking sector. So that would be definitely negative. But in terms of valuations, banks are actually one of the cheaper ones compared to other sectors. And usually, when an economic recovery happens, usually property sector is usually the leading indicator. So we expect the property sector to recover, one of the first sectors to recover from this crisis. In terms of consumer, definitely we expect a not as fast growth, definitely because of the high unemployment rates, and so that would take a toll also in terms of consumer spending as well. For the gaming sector, we've actually seen quite encouraging news, especially that the government has started to allow casinos, especially in the Bay Area. So companies such as Bloomberry have started to reopen their casinos with a minimal capacity. So for that sector. For the power and water, then definitely this is also a proxy to the economy. So once we start the economies see a recovery in terms of the economy, then definitely that would be in effect correlated to the power sector. For the telco sector, as mentioned earlier in our discussion, that with the entry of Dito Telecommunity, so definitely this would be good for the consumers, as it it allows consumers to have better services, and definitely that would be also good, especially for the consumers as well. But Globe and PLDT might face some tough competition, as of course with a significant. They're actually allowing more, allocating more in terms of capex to improve their services. And if you're looking at companies that, if you think that the market is a little expensive at these levels, in fact, there are some companies that are trading still at a discount compared to their historical averages. And if you look at the right side of the spectrum, those are companies that are still trading below their historical averages. So those are still some companies that we think that are trading discounted to its fair value. So companies like Pure Gold, LTG, DMCI Holdings, PLDT, RLC, Meralco, Globe, and even the AGIs. So those companies, as you can see on the right side of the spectrum, are companies that we think that still has upside versus their historical averages. And of course, we're entering 2021 with with some optimism, and that basically shows the historical performance that the market will always be back. We have managed to bounce back from the Asian financial crisis in 97 and 98, even the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s, and of course with the recent global financial crisis in 2008. So we see this as an opportunity for our investors here, that the timing is ripe to invest in the Philippine stock market. Especially that 2021, we see the following year as a recovery year for the Philippines. And that wraps up this presentation. Thank you. And if you have further questions, please let us know.
Thank you, Alexis-san. It's a very valuable information, and thank you for valuable information. Actually, I want to give you a lot of questions, but maybe our time is not already long, so I select only a couple of questions to you. Okay. Firstly, the very interesting data is each stocks the value compared with the historical average. Yeah, this is right side company is more bargaining, right?
More bargain, yes.
More bargaining,
so
right side.
Trading at a discount compared to their
discounted price.
discounted.
Right? Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
right.
Okay, it's a very interesting and valuable. This is you said the compare with the historical average. Is this the historical average, or you this compare with your calculation for the fair value?
This is historical PE. Usually, how we calculate this is that we get the average PE ratio for the past 5 or 10 years. So let's say, for example, if let's say Ayala Land traded as low as let's say 10 times to as high as 30 times PE. So so that will put your average PE ratio at 20 times. For the past, let's say, 10 years. Average PE is at 20 times. But if Ayala Land is trading at 10 times PE right now, so it's trading at a discount compared to its average PE of 20 times.
Okay. So in that case, a 50% discount.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Okay,
50%.
I got it. Thank you. It's very important. Okay, thank you. And tax ratio, the government already decided to reduce to 25%. Corporate tax. Is this a permanent policy, or is this just tentative?
Yes, this is permanent already.
Permanent.
Yes. Initially, they wanted to do it gradually, but of course, with the COVID crisis, they had to be more aggressive. So they're immediately lowering the corporate income tax from 30% to as low as 25% next year. And then there will be gradual increases, 1 percentage points for the following years. So for 2022, corporate tax will go down to 24% and then 23%, 22, 21. I believe if I remember correctly, as low as they'll bring it down to as low as 20% in about 5 to 6 years.
In about 5 years, not next year. From next year, 25% applied to next year.
Yeah, the 25% will be immediately. So
immediately.
So 30 to 25 will be immediately, and then the succeeding years will be 1 percentage point.
Okay. The finally 20%.
Yes, so 30, and then 25, and then 24, 23, 24.
Okay, gradually. Okay, thank you. Okay, and okay. I think, you mentioned about the gaming industry. It's pretty positive next year because the new casino is going to be open, right? Yeah. And but on the other hand, what's happened for the POGO and BPO industry in Philippines? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess on the casino side, PH Resorts is planning to open their first casino in Mactan. So they're going to be one of the first, they're actually, I believe, the first mover in Mactan for the casino. So similar to, I believe the setup in Mactan would be similar to the Bay Area in Pasay. So I guess the tax rate for the casino is actually more competitive if you compare it to the likes of Singapore and even Macau.
Macau, okay.
So that's why the Chinese gamblers find it more attractive here in the Philippines, especially with the current tax regime in terms of the casinos. Yeah, and especially with of course, the accessibility also of the Mactan Casino to the airport is very close. I believe it's only a 10-15-minute drive from the airport. So which is very, especially for the gamblers, that makes them very convenient for them to access the casinos. And actually that's the same setup that they did here in the Bay in Bay Area. So the airport is only about 10 to 15 minute drive to the Bay Area. So they're doing a similar setup to the island of Mactan. For the POGOs and the BPOs side, I believe some foreign companies have already addressed that they mentioned that they're still planning to expand their outsourcing companies here in the Philippines. As mentioned by, I believe Ayala Land has expressed its confidence that the BPO sector will continue to grow. I think that the BPO sector, the IBPAP, also mentioned that they still expect about 3 to 5% growth in terms of BPO revenues. So that would initially address some of the shortfall from the POGO side. For the POGO side, then definitely I do believe some property consultants have mentioned that we might see an exodus also of POGOs. Some POGOs have actually exited already the country, so that would make a dent also on the property sector. But as the economy starts to improve, more companies are still expanding. Then definitely that would be also beneficial for the property sector, especially on the office segment side. We might not see the low vacancy rate immediately in the following quarters, but definitely as more businesses start to expand, more businesses start to reopen, then definitely the vacancy rate might it might take a while for it to recover. Yeah, I do believe there are some areas that the vacancy rate remains still high. I think as the likes of Quezon City still remains high. Some estimates show at least about double-digit vacancy rates for some areas. So I think that would be some of I guess just an overview also of the office segment. So I guess just to summarize, so single-digit growth for the BPO sector and declining POGOs. As well. The traditional segment, I do believe that that traditional segment might take a while also to recover, especially that some of the businesses are streamlining their processes as well.
Okay. Thank you, Rex-san. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you, Mr. Lexter, Mr. Yamura, and Mr. Matsushita for joining us today in this weekly stock market wrap-up. That is it for our weekly stock market wrap-up with AB Capital Securities Inc. Thank you and see you next week.